So my name is Bob Ainsworth. I live in Marlboro. I'm a retired accountant. Who knew an accountant could write, but I can. When I was getting ready to retire, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. It's 2018. And I used to teach accounting besides, so I had my CPA, I was a controller, chief financial officer, that sort of stuff. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I used to teach accounting, but they wanted me to teach in the summers, so that was like out. And I thought I could do consulting, but I really don't have enough contacts, and I'm not really good at marketing, so I couldn't get clients. So I started thinking about, well, I always liked to read as a kid, and I'm sort of a history mystery guy. So like I read the old Perry Masons, remember, old Stanley Gardner, Raymond Burr on TV. They're in rerun now. They're great. Sherlock Holmes, all that sort of stuff. And I, read mysteries my whole life. The last history book I just read was on James Buchanan, the president before Lincoln, who pretty much precipitated the Civil War. So I just sort of liked that, and I had to come up with a way to create a book. And I hit upon an idea that the people I admired the most would be my good guys. And especially one guy who I worked for who was a genius, who started a $1 billion company out of nothing, donated $350 million to the MIT Brain Institute, a guy named Patrick McGovern. So we put out computer magazines, we did the Dummies books. I was the controller for the Dummies books for a while. And so everybody I liked are my good guys. And the people who I thought were jerks are my bad guys. But it sort of gave me faces and voices and reasons to do all that. So it made that simple. And then I decided to write about where I've been. So my first book, Conned, is on Nantucket. The second book, Duped, is about the Gardner Museum. I've been there. The third book is about the North Shore of Boston, where my wife comes from. So I just sort of made it simple that way, and then I just had to write. And my last job, I was commuting to Boston on a train, and I had a spiral notebook for writing. And I started writing in it, and after a month I had 150, I had filled it, and I typed it, and it was 150 pages double-spaced, which is almost half a book. A book is about 350 pages. So I was just like, well, maybe I can do this. I'm not very good at it, but if I can put volume out, at least I can get better. If I couldn't do volume, I couldn't get better. So I wrote the Nantucket book, Conned, and one of my friends loved a character I had called Uncle Louie. So Uncle Louie is sort of a Sopranos type, mobster guy, like black hat, shirt, the white, tie. And he's an actual guy. He was the uncle of one of my wife's high school girlfriends, who was the scariest guy you ever want to meet. And so he became Uncle Louie, and then I had to put a crime, and I needed a Boston crime. And what's the biggest unsolved crime in Boston? This. So then that came the book, and then the guy was like, well, start doing presentations. You know a lot about the theft. So that became this. And that's how I got into this whole deal. And it's a lot of fun. I've done like 30 or 35 of these. I got another 30 to go. And people seem to enjoy it. You guys don't know me from a hole in the wall, but you know the Gardner. And so, I get this is about the average size, 30, although I was telling her that I did one of these, I got one guy, me and Dave. Dave sat right there, and we had a nice hour-long conversation. So, but that's fine. He was there and he enjoyed it, so I was good with that. So what I would like you to do now is to relax, and I want you all to close your eyes. There's always a few people who don't, and that's okay. I'm just telling you it's better to visualize this, and you get a better picture of what things are. So I want you to picture yourself hovering over the city of Boston. Below you is a brown rectangle building. In the middle of it is a skylight. The building faces the Fens. Off to your left is the Citgo sign in Fenway Park. Off to the right is the Museum of Fine Arts and Northeastern University. It's an hour after the end of St. Patrick's Day, March 18th, 1990. There's a road to the left of this building called Palace Road. It's a one-way road that goes towards the Fens. It's not a very well-lit road. Everything's sort of amber color. There's a bump out on the side of that building, which is an entrance for security and employees. About 100 feet down from that bump out, a car is sitting there, idling. 2 men are in it. The driver's a little taller than the passenger. It's 1 a.m. All of a sudden they hear some people singing Irish songs, St. Patrick's songs, right? It's an hour after the end of St. Patrick's Day. It's some drunk college kids, 2 couples. The girls are on the guy's shoulders. They're chicken fighting, coming up the road. They get to opposite the car and they tumble over. One of the girls looks in the car. She can't see faces, but she can see the left shoulder of the driver. She sees a Boston police patch. Oh my God, we're going to get busted. We got to get out of here. Before him scramble up and take off. Car doesn't move. A couple of seconds later, that side door opens up. Just for a second. Flash of light comes out, door closes. Guys in the car don't do anything again. At about 20 after 1, the driver puts the car in gear and slowly glides up to where he's opposite that bump out. The 2 men get out. They're in complete Boston police officer uniforms, from their pointed hat to the gold stripe on their pants. They go up to the side door. Hey, let us in. We hear there's been a disturbance. They get buzzed in. Now they're in sort of a glass enclosed area. They flash their badge. They get buzzed in again. To their right is a counter. Behind the counter is a guy with long hair. And they say to him, hey, come over here. We think we recognize you. We want to talk to you for a second. He comes out from around the counter. Where's your partner? There's always 2 on duty. Oh, he's doing his rounds. Call him. So they give him his walkie-talkie. He calls his partner. His partner comes down. The 2 cops slam the guys up against the wall. They take their wallets. We know who you are. We know where you live. You better not talk about this at all. This is a robbery. They duct tape the guys. They walk them down to the basement. They don't take a wrong turn. They don't take a misstep. They know exactly where they're going. They take one guy to one end of the basement, one guy to the other end. Duct tape them, handcuff them, attach them to something. Then they leave. This has taken about 20 minutes. These cops, fake cops, are not in a rush at all. They go upstairs, they skip the first floor, go to the second floor. They go to the Dutch room, start taking paintings off the wall, busting frames, razor blading paintings out, leaving a complete mess. One of the guys goes around the inner courtyard to the short gallery, or short room. He starts taking some things down. He goes back and forth a couple of times. They're at this for almost an hour. Again, not in a great rush. Gets to be about 20 minutes or 2. They bring all their items down to the first floor, to the guards area. They leave a broken frame on the security director's chair as a gotcha. They take the videotape, because there was a camera taping the street and the guards area. They take a paper tape that recorded all the movements in the Gardner. They go down the basement and check on the 2 guys, make sure they're still tied up. They are. Takes them 2 trips, in and out, to get their 13 items out of the museum into their car. Then they get in their car, drive up that side street, and then disappear. They take a left or a right, who knows, but they're gone. Now you can open your eyes. So that's the theft. It just sort of helps to see, to visualize what it is. So clearly I was describing the Gardner, the brown building, the skylight, the inner courtyard, the rooms all around it. It's a gorgeous place. If you haven't been there, you really ought to go. I think it's especially nice in winter because you go in there and you see all the greenery. And it really is a gorgeous place. The other thing about the museum is it's not a regular museum with like regular walls and floors and paintings hung. Everything in the museum is something collected. Floors, fireplaces, ceilings, everything is things that they brought over. I mean, there's a basic structure, but she brought everything over there. So you really have to be aware of, oh, this is like from a Spanish monastery. Oh, this is from a French chapel. It's just an astounding place. Anyway, so let me get going here. So that's the Dutch room after they got through. And you could tell they really had no regard for what they were doing. They were just there to rob. So these were not art lovers. Right? And you can see the busted frames. Here's the courtyard. This is the tapestry room. They went in there for a second or two and then came out. They didn't do anything in there. They just sort of looked. The guy who went around to the short gallery went down this way and around to the other side. So I want to talk a bit about Isabella. I guess there's a really good book out about her, The Lioness of Boston or something. It's supposed to be very good. People talk about that. And, this isn't all about her, but, she's a pretty interesting character for the time. And I'll talk about what was taken. There were other attempts to get into the Gardner as well as the MFA. I'll tell you who did it, because we know that. I'll tell you who provided the police uniforms. We know that. After that, it gets kind of sketchy. And then where do the things go is the great mystery. So I'll talk a little bit about Isabella and how she got to create a museum. So she was a very private woman, was very concerned with her image, so there aren't a lot of photos of her. There are more sketches and paintings because she could obviously tell the artist, make me look how I want you to make me look. But that's her as a young girl. That's her engagement picture to Jack Gardner. So she came from New York, really wealthy family. And he was very wealthy. He was a Gardner, but he was also a Peabody and sort of that whole rich Boston tradition. That's the picture of her with their one son, Jackie. He unfortunately died soon after he was born. Then she had a miscarriage, and that was the end of them having children or trying to, and that's when they started traveling. So they went to China, they went to Europe, and just collected everything. So this is her a little later, 1888. So it's a little hard to see, but this is the ladder. So she's telling the workmen, do it this way, right? She didn't just like write a check and say, oh, build me a building. She was there telling them, make it look like this. And they did. That's her spiritual phase. She was interesting in that way. She's a little quirky. And this is a picture of her later. So that's the picture of her by John Singer Sargent that's in the museum. And this picture does no justice to it at all. It's just a vibrant red and gold. It's just stunning. Those two were by a guy named Anders Zorn. And you see this headdress on top of that there are diamonds. She had a lot of money, right? She built a museum. She put all the stuff in it. She put diamonds on her crown, I guess. So this is a picture of her with Rex the lion from the Franklin Park Zoo. She borrowed the lion and walked him up Boylston Street because, she could. And for her time, she was sort of out there, and I don't need to remind you, women didn't get the right to vote until 1917, 16, something in there. But, she's drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, playing backgammon, driving a car. Oh my God, what an amazing thing. But, as somebody said, she's a millionaire bohemian, the eccentric leader of the smart set. She had a lot of artists hanging around with her that she supported. So I'll run through this a little bit. So like I said, she was born a wealthy father in New York, married Jack, had that with the children. When her dad died, he left her $1.8 million, which is $78 million today. Then Jack died as they were starting to build the museum, and he left her $2.7 million, which is $102 million. So she had about $180 million to play with. She opened a museum. She lived on the 4th floor. Right now, there's stuff on the 4th floor, thousands of pieces of art you will never, ever see. And I'll tell you why. And then the museum opened. She died and left $1.2 million to the museum. So this is an estate that she and Jack inherited from his parents. It's in Brookline, Green Hill. This is her parlor, and you can see all the stuff she's collecting. She was a little bit of a hoarder. And that's what the place looks like today. It's still in Brookline. This gigantic estate is sitting there, which is, to me, pretty amazing.
Who lives there? Is it a museum too?
No, that's a personal residence. Yeah. So this is where they lived on Beacon Street. On that side, her dad built that for them. And then Jack built the other side, 152 Beacon Street. A member of the Draper family bought the two of them and knocked it all down. And they put up this, and then the one next to it, that. But there's a sign there that says, this is where she used to live. Right? So it's sort of right down near the public garden. It's that end. So just in case you don't know, there's where the Gardner is, right? There's Fenway Park, Kenmore Square, Northeastern, the MFA. So I'm going to have you remember three things today. So the first one I want you to remember is Palace Road. That's the road to the left of the Gardner. It's a one-way street. There's another view of Boston. So there's the Fenway area, okay? You all should know when I put this up what this means. Right? That's Whitey Bulger territory in South Boston. Okay? I have a couple of stories about Whitey. And the second thing I want you to remember is TRC Auto Electric. It's still there. It's an auto repair shop, 1325 Dorchester Avenue in Dorchester. So that's number 2. And the third one I want you to remember is the city of Revere, which is about 6 miles north. Okay? Up on the ocean. So like I said, the Gardner isn't just a museum. It's the whole building is everything. Right? So the courtyard is in the middle, things are around it, but everything there you really need to look at. And as a friend of hers said, if she inherited money, she'd have a place with beautiful pictures and let people go see it. And that's exactly what she did. I'll try and stay out of your way.
I can move.
I'll try. So this is a hotel they used to stay at in Venice. It was sort of the inspiration for the Gardner. This is another place she liked, and she liked it so much. Let me see if this thing will work. Why it's not working? Maybe. I should do. Let me try that. You just. You rotate the battery in the thing, and sometimes it works. Nope, doesn't want to work. Okay. But I told the buzzer. Those balconies, she tore them down and took them to Boston. They are in the Gardner now. Oh yeah, no, she was serious about her collecting, and she had the money to do what she wanted, so she did. So that's the courtyard now. Right, so there's the Dutch room. Back there you can see there's an empty frame. This is the corridor the guy took to come to the short gallery, which is on this side. So this is what Fenway looked like before she got going. So the MFA bought their land over that side in 1899. Fenway Park was built in 1912. She put this thing up in 1900. And, the Fenway is part of Frederick Olmsted's necklace. But that's what it looked like after she got done. So it really wasn't a great place when she got started, but then she built it up and people started saying, oh, this is a good place to live, and Boston expanded. And that's what it looks like today. So here's that Palace Road on the side there. This is where she lived. She lived on the 4th floor. That bump out I kept telling you about, that was her personal entrance. It's blocked now. But and this is all the new part back this way. So there's a couple of big questions, but one of them is, why could people get into this thing so easily? And part of the reason actually had to do with Isabella. She was very particular about the museum. And this is her will. And she gave $1.2 million to the museum, which is not really a whole lot of money. I mean, it is, but it isn't to run a museum. But she said they could only spend the income. So if you're getting maybe 10% on your money, that's only $120,000. That's not a lot of money to run a world-class museum. The other part was, she said, If you move anything in the museum, one thing, then you have to sell everything in the museum. You have to sell the museum, and everything goes to Harvard. So that's why there's thousands of pieces on the 4th floor that are stored there that will never come out. Because if they put them on display, the museum disappears. So she sort of handcuffed them by how she restricted the money. The other thing was, so if any of you are on a board of directors, you have 3 jobs. Write a big check, get other people to write big checks, and go to meetings. And if you do the first 2, they don't care about the third. But the people who were on the board were not very good at fundraising. So besides her limiting what they could do, like even sell a few pieces, and the board not raising money, the place was not in great shape. So I told you about that camera that was out on the street in the guards area. There was no backup for that. You would think they'd have a backup. The guards were old men and hippies. Literally. Old men and hippies. And there was no auto alarm. So normally if there's a guard system, they'll go around and say, okay, I went here, and went here, and went here. So if somebody doesn't do their rounds, alarms go off, fireworks, the whole thing. They didn't have that system. Nothing was connected to anything. So they were short of money, and they limited it, and they did the best they could. So what was taken? So somebody was asking me before. So there's this. So there's 33 or 34 Vermeers in the world. This one's worth something around $250 million, right, the concert. There's this Rembrandt, which is only seascape, and that's worth $100 million. Or more, right? Just take a number, add a ton of zeros, and you're close, right? It's just huge money.
Is this the worth their value in 1990?
No, now, when I look on now. The newspaper reports at the time said what was stolen was worth $200 million back then, and that's 34 years ago. So this is just expanded. This last one is Lady and Gentleman in Black, which is what I stole for the cover of my book, because I'm never going to be a New York Times bestseller list, so nobody cares and nobody's going to arrest me. So I like the cover. In hindsight, I wish I had put the cover upside down, and then that would have been sort of funnier. But so then there's this, which is by Manet, called Chez Tortoni. I couldn't get a value of that, but I'm sure it's worth a lot. That's by a guy named Flink, who was a student of Rembrandt. That's worth a ton of money. And then there's that little thing. It's 2 by 2. It's a little sketch by Rembrandt. Anybody want to guess what it's worth?
Whoa.
That's what I saw.
Whoa.
I can't believe that for a little 2 by 2 thing, but that's what I saw. So it's called Trois Mustaches, because it sort of looks like he has 3 mustaches. But it's this little stamp size thing. So this is what the room looks like now. They put the frames back up because things have to look like they were as best they can so they don't bust up the will. So that's where Lady and Gentleman in Black was. That's where Storm of the Sea of Galilee was. You see this little white dot there? There was a vase there. It's called the Chinese gu or a ku. So they're taking Rembrandts and Vermeers and they're taking flower pots. I know it's sort of hard to understand. The Vermeer, the concert was there. Flink was on the back side, so they were sort of like this. And remember I was saying, you have to look at everything. This floor is from like some Spanish castle, and this is from some French thing. And it's just, So they did not take this Rembrandt, but they took the little one that was there. And this is the corridor they went to go to the short gallery, and that's the entrance to that tapestry room. Oop. I don't know how to go back. Anyway, it was just a picture of the obelisk. Yes, of course, Ken.
Did she buy this stuff and then have a roof designed around it?
I have no idea.
Like the flooring and stuff?
Well, I'm sure she had, yes.
Do you know why they would have passed up on the museum's Raphael?
I have a thought.
Must have been awful.
I will share. Who knows how she did it, but she was quirky and did it however she felt like it. So this is the short gallery or short room. It's not much bigger than a walk-in closet. Okay, it's really pretty tiny. So this is a flag of Napoleon's. That was on a staff. On top of the staff was an eagle called a finial. They took that eagle. They tried to take this, but they couldn't. And then they took 5 sketches by Degas, just a little paint pencil, watercolor, but not from the first door. It was like from the 5th or 6th door. So again, it's sort of odd how they did their choices. So here's Napoleon's finial. So it says 1 because it's the 1st regiment. This is the only item of the 13 that was ever seen after the robbery. And we know that because 2 years ago, a jeweler who worked on Washington Street in Boston came forward and said a couple of months after the theft, a guy walked in with the eagle wrapped up and unopened it and said, "What will you give me for this?" And the guy's answer was, "Why didn't you just steal the Mona Lisa? It would be easier to sell than this eagle in Boston that you just robbed." So, and the guy who brought that in was a guy named Bobby Donati, who we will hear about more. So these are the Degas sketches. And again, I'm not knocking Degas. I mean, that's still Degas, but these aren't Rembrandts. These aren't Titians. These aren't Rubens, right? And 3 of them are of jockeys. This is what she paid for everything, so I'll leave that up there for a second. So she paid about $142,000 for everything. But you can see, so that lady and gentleman, she paid a lot for that. That little Rembrandt 2x2, $120. The vase she paid a lot for. I think it's like a 2,000-year-old Chinese vase, something like that. She paid a lot for that. So it's sort of interesting, $90 for Degas sketches. So, things were worth it, but she still didn't spend millions on this stuff. She spent $142,000, and today it's worth, take your pick, right? Who knows? What you could actually get this stuff for, because it's priceless. So, like I said, I was an accountant, so I sort of like detail stuff, and I'm retired, so I don't have things to do all the time, so I go digging for things I find interesting. So this is her receipt for buying the Shea Tortoni. It says that up there. So this is shipping the Degas sketches. That's her receipt for items held in France. So see here it says Rubens, and there it says a Rembrandt. This is her receipt for the 3 mustaches. See, Rembrandt, $120.
Where did you find those?
I can't remember. I don't know where I found it. I was just digging one day. It might have been actually on the Gardner website, now that I think about it. But don't hold me to that. So this is another receipt for the concert. So it says the concert right there. This is her receipt for buying that Napoleon flag. I couldn't find a receipt for buying the eagle, but that's for the flag. That's a Rembrandt receipt. And that is her personal check for half of the vase. Being an accountant, I thought it was interesting finding a check, right? She used State Street Bank. I just, thought that was fun. So why were those things taken? So besides why did they get in, why was this stuff taken? So I have 2 stories. So I was doing this down in Bourne, and I finish this part, and there's a woman standing back there, and she sort of stands up and yells, "You're wrong." Okay, fine, I'm just a guy, I've done some research, I could be wrong 100%. So afterwards I went and talked to her. She's a very nice lady, she gave me her name. She said, "My better half," that was her word, she said, "my better half is a hitman for the mafia," which he is, and she is, and he told her that days after the theft, the stuff disappeared too, because it was already spoken for. However, we know a couple of months after the theft, the eagle was shown to the jeweler. So maybe not everything disappeared that way. But okay, fine. And again, you have to think about this like the Kennedy assassination. There were never a trial. There was never evidence presented. There's as many theories on this as to who shot JFK. You just don't know. So you have to take that. So my other story is I was in the hospital for, doesn't matter, for a couple of days, and I had a roommate, a little old guy, a little older than I was, and we're talking. He's like, so what do you do? And I said, well, I'm writing this book about the Gardner, and he starts laughing at me. I'm like, okay, John, why are you laughing at me? He says, well, if I tell you, I'll have to kill you. Which, no, well, in the end, I don't think he did. But anyway, so I kept asking him day after day, why are you not telling me why you're laughing at me? So finally, I get to my last day, I go around the curtain, I sit on his bed, it's like, John, you got to tell me why you did this. He said, okay. He said, I was a Korean War vet, worked my way up from being a bouncer to owning a restaurant, and he said, I owned a restaurant with Whitey Bulger. A clean restaurant, not like a hideout for Weeks and Fleming, but a good Italian restaurant. He said, and I'm telling you, Whitey did it. So I have this lady telling me the mafia did it. I have this guy telling me Whitey did it. So I've had people in my audience say the stuff's in Kentucky, it's in Melrose, it's like, who knows? But I like this theory, and I stumbled, and Ian, you're going to ask where I found this? Somewhere on Reddit. Anyway, this guy found this. This is the 1984 guidebook for the Gardner. And this is the description of the Dutch room. And guess which items are described in the booklet? That little vase and that picture. And guess what else is described? The obelisk by Flank. Guess what 5 items are listed as from Degas in the short gallery? The ones that were taken. So I like this. This is simple. It's like somebody took a list and said, here, you go down to Hannaford's and get this, and you go to Stop and Shop and get this, and then we'll meet downstairs and we'll see if we can sell the stuff, because we're just idiots and we're going to buy, whatever. It gets better. So that Chez Tortoni, that's where it is now. It's a small picture, right? There's the frame back up. Guess which is the only item that's pictured in this book for the Blue Room where this thing is? That picture. So I like this. This makes sense to me. Somebody took a list out of a book and said, get this stuff. Because maybe they didn't really care what they took. Maybe there was another reason. So what wasn't taken? Somebody was mentioning what did they not take? Well, they didn't take that Rembrandt from the wall, and they were in that room. They didn't take a Rubens, right? And the biggest one they did not take was this Titian. That was done 104 for the King of Spain in like 1500s. The 4 of them were at the Gardner, and they're worth $1 billion together. Right? Now, this was on the 3rd floor, and it was heavy and big, so maybe they were just lazy or tired or who knows what. But they didn't take those, among other thousands of stuff. Crazy guys.
Did they actually cut the paintings out of the frame?
Yeah. Yeah. Busted or ripped them out. So there were other attempts, which I will tell you about, and I'll tell you who did it and where the stuff went. So, a decade before the theft, the FBI had an undercover agent working to find stolen art. And he gets a tip that somebody's going to bust into the Gardner. When I did this presentation in Gardner, Massachusetts, not the Isabella, but there, a guy in the audience was in this room. He was head of security at the Gardner at the time. So he was in the room, and the FBI came in and said there's going to be a break-in. So they tightened up security, but nothing ever happened. But a decade before, the FBI had an idea somebody was going to bust in. 2 months before the theft, at the back of the Museum of Fine Arts, so this is the Finn side, not where the big eagle or Indian statue is, 2 guys in cops go up to the back of the MFA. Hey, let us in. We hear there's been a disturbance. The guard says, I can't let you in. That's against our protocol. I have to find my boss. So he goes looking for his boss, but if you've been to the MFA, you know it's like gigantic. It takes him 8 years to find his boss. By the time they get back, the guys are gone. But 2 guys tried to get into the MFA 2 months before the theft. The MFA never told anybody about the attempted break-in. Nice guys. 2 weeks before the theft, at the Gardner, 2 guys on Palace Road are beating up another guy. The guy who's getting beaten up breaks away, goes to the side door. Hey, let me in, I'm getting beaten up. I can't let you in. He walks away, gets in the car with the 2 guys who are beating him up, and they all drive away together. It's 2 weeks before.
And they don't report any of this to anybody else or the police.
Now, why do that? This is March 17th, so 24 hours before the theft, at least 3, if not 4 men, because it looks like men, are let into the Gardner. And we know this because the FBI released the tape. The thieves only took the tape from the 18th. They didn't take the tape from the 17th. If you care to look, all you have to do is go to FBI.gov, and you can type that in, or just type in FBI.gov Gardner, and you can watch this thing. Now, it's really hard to watch. It's very dark. Your eyeballs need to get like this big, and you have to watch it like 30 times. And so you didn't have to do that. I did. And I have screenshots. So this is that guard's room the night before the theft. And so here's the counter. So when I said it was old men, there's the old man. He was always on duty at night. However, he was not on duty the night of the theft. He called in sick. So you can see the time, right? It's 37:19, a little before 1 o'clock. So here's the other guard, the hippie. And I wasn't kidding, old men and hippies. So he's got his long hair, there's his hat, he's talking on the phone right at the same time. And what happens next? Oh, there was an alarm to the cops, that's why they took him from behind the counter. That's why they took him from, so he couldn't hit the button. Okay? This is Palace Road, so there's 4719. This is 4810. This is a car backing down Palace Road to that bump out away from the fence. Right? See all the lights out? Here's the side door to the garden. 4839, the old guy takes a hike. The hippie is still there. I don't know if you can see the legs there. The lights are out in the car, so he's turned the car off. You can see the interior lights go on and off, and this is somebody walking towards that side door. And here's the hippie guard hitting the buzzer to let him in. Okay? That guard is a guy named Rick Abath, passed away about 6 weeks ago, lived in Vermont. I have a audio, and I'll show it to him. A couple of seconds later, here's the guy who went in, going back to his car. You can see the lights are out, so he hasn't gotten in the car yet. But then, he turns on the lights. Somebody is here. So he's still in the car, and there's somebody else here. Where'd they come from? They did not get out of the car. You can't see the passenger door open. And here's the guy inside at 4947. Here's the hippie. The old guy is gone. There's a person. Don't know who he is. So that's 2. Things are dark for a while. There's not much to be seen. But then at 5300, here's another guy going in. A lawyer came forward who said he knows this guy and will not disclose his name because the lawyer is afraid he will be killed, and he's not kidding. He was a Norfolk district attorney or assistant DA. So if he's scared, he's scared. 5300, somebody is coming out of it. So this guy goes in, somebody comes out. The car is still sitting there idling. 5330, the car drives away. This person did not get in the car. So it's like 2 people were somehow hanging around, didn't get in or out of the car, but they're there. And the car drives away, and this person did not get in the car because, again, you don't see the lights go on. So that's at least 3, maybe 4 people who were in the Gardner. So one idea is that it was this guy on the left. His name is Larry O'Brien, who's the assistant head of security, but he had no reason to get in, and he doesn't look like this guy at all. Forget the coat. It's just like he's thin and angular, and this guy looks a little bulkier. It's just not the same guy. So on the 18th, what I had you visualize, you know about the partiers, right? The college kids. That car was a 1988 red Dodge Daytona hatchback. So they didn't take like a gray Toyota Corolla, of which there are 8,000 billion in the world. They took an 88 red Dodge Daytona hatchback. They were not smart guys. Okay? We know about the security guards, and they're all tied up, but the guard, so that, remember, the kids did not see faces. The guards saw faces. And now I'll talk about the theft and the discovery the next day. So this is the statements from the partiers. And the cops were like, look, you were drunk kids, you didn't see any faces, thanks for playing, but, go back to school. So they did. That's what an 88 red Dodge Daytona hatchback looks like. That's the car in the picture. That does not look like a Chevy minivan to me. They look kind of like the same car. So I think that was the same car the night before and the night of the theft. So that's Rick Abath. He had a band called Uriah. They used to have beer and weed parties at that house in Alston, Brighton. The other guard who was tied up the night of the theft was a guy named Randy Hestead, who had nothing to do with anything. He was just called in that night, did his job, and was there. Wrong place, wrong time.
Clock in, there would be 2 guards.
This is the guard.
Rick was one of the night watchmen on duty the night of the crime. Until now, he'd never done a television interview about what happened that night.
Cops rang the doorbell. They said Boston police would have a report of a disturbance on the premises. So I buzzed them in.
That decision to buzz them in is something Rick Abbott has had to live with for the past 23 years.
The cop that was dealing with me turned to me and said, don't ever leave, don't ever mention anything. I think there's a warrant out for your arrest. Can you step out from behind the desk?
Here, Rick makes another grave mistake. He steps away from the security desk and away from the panic button. His only way to contact the outside world. His only way to prevent what was about to happen. In a matter of minutes, the 2 thieves had both night watchmen completely under their control.
He finished cuffing me and cuffed my partner and very dramatically said, gentlemen, this is a robbery.
The thieves lead Rick and his partner down to the basement to different areas. Rick is taken to the boiler room and cuffed to an electrical box. His eyes and mouth were duct taped, and he feared for his life. It all happened so fast, he never had a chance to hit the one panic button by the guard desk. He knew no one was coming to help. Did the thieves know that as well? It appears they did, since they were in no rush to get out.
So I just thought that was pretty cool. I found that about a month ago. It was on Anderson Cooper 360. It was a decade ago, but there was a show 3 weeks ago that played that. And then I found a tape that it's just sort of interesting listening to him. Anywho, so this is a cutaway of the Gardner, just sort of, to give you an idea of where things were. So here's Palace Road, here's the bump out, here's the Dutch room, here's the short gallery, the blue room is down here. So what I had you visualize was this, and I'll just put it up there quicker. You can read faster than I can talk. Everything's going smooth until then. The motion detectors stopped working. They have no idea why. They tested the equipment afterwards, and they know it was working because it started up again. And then it stopped again. And then it started again. No idea why. Maybe that's how they got down to that blue room, because they were somehow undetected, don't know. Anyway, 2:45 gets to the end, the stuff's downstairs, they put the frame, like I said, da-da-da, and Gone Baby Gone, which is a really good book and movie. Ben Affleck directs his brother, but both of them are really good. So this is just a cutaway I stole from the Boston Globe, just to sort of give you a more visual of where they went in and down, and here's the Dutch room, here's the short gallery, here's the gaps, right? So this is the day of the theft. There's the side entrance, and here's what it looks like today. So the only one to go into that blue room was Abath. He went in twice. At least that was detected. And he's the one who opened that side door. Remember, the side door went open, the lights flashed. He did that. He said he was, quote unquote, testing the alarm, whatever the heck that meant. But the fake cops never went in there as far as they know. So this is the tape. The only thing those fake cops got wrong was there was a duplicate of this tape, a paper record of where everybody was. So you can see it says, someone's in the Dutch room, investigate immediately. Yeah, no kidding, you're getting robbed, but nobody's seeing it. It shows up nowhere except on the computer monitor where the guards are supposed to sit. A lot of good it does there. So here's the discovery, and yes, that's a knife back there, but that was there later. There's a picture of this without that knife, so this is him tied up. So what do we know about the thieves? We know the video from the night before. We know the kids saw the car. We know the timeline. And the guards gave descriptions. And they were able to give the police artist enough information to do sketches. So those are the sketches of the two guys. This is one guy, glasses, mustache, no mustache, no mustache, mustache, no mustache. And they gave descriptions, but they were sort of different, right? These guys were scared. So he says he had glasses. Hested said no glasses. Hested said mustache. This guy said no mustache. So, they were confused, they were scared, but that's fine. Eyewitness accounts are horribly inaccurate. So who did it? Was it an inside job? Was it Abath and the security director? Yeah, not likely. Was it Pierce Brosnan, a freelance art thief? Was it Pink Panther? Right? Somebody else, some great art thief out there who's going after this stuff. Sure, why not? It could be. Could it be the mafia? Well, which one? The Patriarch is in Rhode Island, Angelo's in the North End, Murray in Charlestown, Whitey Bulger in South Boston. Take your pick. There's a lot to choose from. And then there's some out-of-state guys. Or was it just a couple of morons? Which, from the car they used, I would say it's the morons. So here's Abath, that's the picture I screenshot. So like I said, he had no sign of wealth, he was a teacher, he died like in upstate Vermont, New Hampshire. I would have lost the hair by this time. I don't think that's a good look on an older guy, but whatever.
Is he still alive?
No, he died about 6 weeks ago. And passed lie detector tests. There's this guy that they had an eye on because he was living on Beacon Hill the day of the theft. And he was known to try and steal stuff dressed up as somebody. However, he left town soon after the theft because he told his girlfriend somebody paid him $300,000 to rob the Gardner and he had to leave town. I think he was just trying to break up with her and that was his excuse. But he went to Hollywood to try and become a screenwriter. He pitched the Gardner theft as a movie and got shot down and then he just left and who knows where he is. But he lived on Beacon Hill the day of the theft. Then there's this guy. You might have heard his name. So Miles Garner, mildly local famous rock and roll band, the Wild Ones. Somebody did a documentary on him recently. He stole paintings with that Bobby Donati in 1974. So this is the second time we've heard Donati's name. Connor stole a Rembrandt from the MFA and gave it back so he didn't have to go to jail, which is a good reason to, if you get caught, you just turn the stuff back. Because the museums don't want it known, this stuff, how they got the stuff. So that's him now. Thing was, he was in jail the day of the theft, but he knew how to rob the Gardner. He was just in jail at the time. And he was friends with a guy named William Youngworth, who we will get to. Here's Youngworth. Stole a Rembrandt with Miles Connor. Had 60 convictions. He was in jail the day of the theft, but he owned this art store. Personally, I like the Liberace down there, sort of like dogs playing poker. And he fenced stolen art. That was like his deal. So he showed a reporter from the Boston Herald a rolled up painting from this time period. And the reporter scraped some of the oil paint off, and they tested it. And it was the right time period, but not the right painting. So he was trying to scam everybody for the $5 million reward. The reward's $10 million right now, in case any of you guys have the painting. He was also a friend of Joseph Murray, and we'll get to him in a second. So here's a guy named David Houghton. He dated Miles Connor's sister. He visited Connor in jail and said, hey, if I want to break into the Gardner, how would I do it? And Miles Connor told him. So he weighed 350 pounds, and those guards were scared, but not that scared. Neither of the guys weighed 350. He passed away soon after the theft. This guy's a guy named Louis Royce, longtime art thief. He slept in the Gardner as a kid. When he was 13 or 14, he found out his father, who the man he thought was his father, wasn't. He ran away from home and was a street kid after that. So he would go into the Gardner, slip under a table that had a tablecloth, and sleep there. He knew the Gardner inside out. He knew the guards, where they went, everything. He was the guy that the FBI had the tip on a decade before. He was casing the thing at least that far in advance. He also owned a place that fenced stolen art. He robbed a house and gave the paintings back to avoid a jail. It was a sad case. I mean, he was had drug issues, homeless, and passed away in 2020. So it could have just been a couple of guys, right? Those are the sketches. So how does that look? Pretty reasonable facsimiles. So the guy on the left is a guy named George. I didn't have room to put all this on there. His name is George Jamaica Plain Ricefelder, was his nickname. And the other guy is Lenny the Mutt DiMuzio. Right, they're mafia guys. They have to have cute names. So these are the two guys who did it. Right? This is like 99% that they did it. So here's George being let off to jail, but really happy about it. One other time. Here's another picture of him. He owned that red Dodge Daytona. So they didn't even get a stolen car. They used his. He worked at TRC Auto Electric. Remember I said to remember Palace Road, TRC Auto Electric? He worked at TRC Auto Electric. His sister-in-law said she saw that Shea Tortoni on his bedroom wall once. He died of a coke overdose a year after the theft. His body was discovered by a guy named Carmelo Merlino, who we will now meet after we meet Lenny. So here's Lenny the Mutt. He worked at, thank you, audience participation. He disappeared a year after the theft, and it took him a while to find his body because it was in the trunk of a car under a bridge in East Boston. But they eventually found his body, and he had just been, beaten up and killed. Because he was allegedly killed by this guy, David Turner, who owed him money. And here's David Turner, and guess where he worked? TRC Auto Electric. You're getting a pattern here. So here's TRC. That Carmelo Merlino owned this. And out of it, he ran a cocaine ring for the Patriarcha. So they'd taken the part out, like the brake pads, put cocaine in the box, and then send the box around. So here's Carmelo, handsome guy, I think. Patriarcha underboss, owned TRC, ran the cocaine ring. So the guy who ran the cocaine ring, whose employee did the theft, found the body of a guy who died of a cocaine overdose. Awfully convenient. He was convicted of an armored car robbery. He exchanged a painting, not a Gardner painting. He exchanged a painting for jail time. And he was caught on a wire in 97, 98 talking about the Gardner theft. He didn't do it, but he was talking about it. And he passed away in jail. So here's everybody who worked at TRC. George, Lenny, Bobby, David, Tony Romano, he wore the wire, and Carmelo Merlino. So there's 7 guys who all worked at the same place, all connected to the Gardner. So who planned it? So you've got to think this in layers, right? There's the 2 guys who went in, they were clearly morons. Somebody got them the police uniforms, and I'll tell you who did that. But then there's another layer up above. Somebody who planned it, maybe somebody who distributed the stuff. So could this have been a Whitey Bulger crime? So if any of you know about Whitey, most besides liking to kill people, what he got his money from was he got 15% of all the crime in his area. So if you robbed a bank, 15%. Robbed a liquor store, 15%. So that was his thing. Art really wasn't his deal. And his 2 guys, Steve Fleming and Weeks, he asked them to find who did the Gardner so he could get his 15%. And he wouldn't have done that if he had done it, right? So Whitey didn't do it. Oh, quick Whitey story. So I was doing one of these things, and there was a woman sitting up front. She said, I have a Whitey story for you. I said, fine. So afterwards, she comes up, and I said, all right, what's the story? So she was looking for a house in Squantum, which is north of Quincy. And she was looking at this house, and she's up in a bedroom, and she really likes the place, but there's this guy in the room that just scares the crap out of her. And she doesn't know why, and then his blonde-haired girlfriend comes in carrying a little dog and says, oh, I love this house, Fine. The lady goes downstairs, tells her realtor, I'm going to buy this house full price. Call me tomorrow, tell me I got the deal. Next day, there's no phone call. She calls her realtor. What happened? Oh, you know that guy who was in the bedroom with you there? That was Whitey Bulger. He came in with a bag of cash, and he said, I am buying your house. And did. That was Whitey's way. So any of you remember the Valhalla? What was the Valhalla? Anybody? Gun running to the IRA? So Charles Murray for Charlestown and Whitey Bulger paid for guns to get put on this ship. It goes across the Atlantic. The guns get offloaded, but there's a double agent over there, so the guns never make it to the IRA. Boat comes all the way back, everybody gets busted. So the theory is Whitey's mad because of the guns, so he steals the Gardner paintings to give them to the IRA so they could sell them to buy guns, and that's just way too complicated. But it's a theory. So here's this guy, Bobby Donati. He worked for this guy, Vinny. He drove for Vinny the Animal Ferrara, and he got that name because he was as bad as Whitey Bulger. Scary guy, but he was in jail. And so one theory is Donati did this to turn the paintings in to get his boss out. That makes sense to me, because they didn't care what they took. They just wanted expensive stuff. He lived in Revere, by the way. Remember Revere? He lived in Revere. He's the one who had that eagle, right? He had the finial. He's the only one who had that. The night before the theft, he was in a Revere bar with 2 full Boston police uniforms in a paper bag, showing them off. He's the one who supplied the uniforms. This is his house in Everett, where he grew up, and they tore that apart and didn't find the paintings. But unfortunately, Bobby didn't live that long. So a year and a half after the theft, he's killed. And his death, I'm not making fun of that, but this is a police officer saying, at this point we have no suspects. Unfortunately, in this kind of case, not too many witnesses come forward. Yeah, no kidding. You come forward, you're going to die. So, that was never solved. So this is a layer up now. These are like the planning guys, the guys who are going to distribute it. So there's a guy named Bobby Guarenti. A couple of pictures of him. He hung out at, of course, TRC Auto Electric. He was friends with David Turner. His widow said he gave a couple of the paintings to another guy named Bobby Gentile, who we'll also meet. A mobster said Garenti told him he put the stuff in the slab of a house in Orlando, Florida. They jackhammered that, never found anything. He died in '04, but he was friends with this guy, Bobby Luisi, who was a Philadelphia mobster. So here's Bobby Gentile. So my other story, when I was up in that Gardner, Mass place, the director there got an anonymous phone call, said my neighbor across the street has the Gardner stuff. But the guy called Gardner, Mass instead of the Isabella Gardner. However, the director knew what to do. He called the FBI. They came screaming out. The next day, they're tearing his house apart in Manchester, Connecticut, and in the basement of this thing was a fake basement, and they found an article about the theft and a list of the 13 items and what you could sell them for. He didn't have the stuff there, but he had those things. He passed away recently. He was sort of one of the last ones to die. So there's this other guy named Jimmy Irish Jim Marks. So Jimmy bragged that he had 2 of the paintings. I'm sure you're guessing where this is going to go. So he was friends with Bobby Garenti, and they're up at Garenti's house in Maine. And Garenti says, let's drive down to Revere and go to the movies. So they take 2 cars, drive down, they park in front of Jimmy's house. Here's where he lived. You see this light here? That was unscrewed. So he's fumbling with his keys, and he gets 2 shotgun blasts in the back from Garenti, and he's killed for bragging that he had some of the paintings. Probably because Garenti actually had them. And we know this because Garenti's wife said he did it. Garenti's passed away too. So where's the stuff? Right? Is it in Revere? Right? Is there going to be this old house episode? They tear down a wall and the stuff comes tumbling out? You know, somebody's going to discover it in their attic? Could be. Could it be up in Maine? Maybe they just looked in the wrong place up at Garenti's spot. Maybe it's in Connecticut. Maybe there's more places, sheds they should tear apart. Maybe it's in Philadelphia with that guy Luisi, because he was sort of a connection. Or maybe it's in another house in Orlando. Could be in any of them. Here's what the FBI says. So read this middle paragraph first. We've identified that these members of criminal organization, da-da-da. That's TRC Auto Electric, right? But then they say the stuff went to Connecticut and Philadelphia, offered for sale, but as of now, we have no knowledge of the whereabouts. And that's the last statement that I could find of what they think officially. So, you know, TRC, and then the stuff just went somewhere.
So is it dead file?
No, they're still after it. No, they're still. They would love to crack this. So, you know, to my simple brain, Donati had the uniforms. He hired 2 guys. They're not very bright. They used the wrong car. They break in. He gets the stuff. He maybe gives it to Garenti, right? Or he hides them. And then they go to Philadelphia. Something like that. So, like, this whole story with my book. So I needed an ending for my fictional book. And like I said, I only sell a couple hundred copies of my books, so I write these to amuse myself. So my wife had a girlfriend, and her uncle was, I called him, that was his name, Uncle Louie. And he was a mafia hitman, scariest dude in the world, but, you know, not smiling, just, and I met him a couple of times. It's just, wow. Don't want to get him angry. Anyway, so I needed a place to put the paintings at the end of my book. And my wife lived in Swampscott, and I would drive there all the time to see her. And I would pass this place called Doc Kagan's Auto Clinic. And I just thought it was hysterical that this little rundown, crappy place was called Doc Kagan's. Right? And he had a white doctor's uniform, and he had on, right, the head mirror. So I put the paintings in the oil changing pit down there. I have my guys find them and put them there, and then they can see them all. And there's a picture I found, a picture of Doc Kagan. So that's what he looked like. So that's my fictional ending of my book. Like I said, I try and amuse myself. So I'm getting to the end. So if you really want to read a really good book about this, Steve Kirchin, Boston Globe, Pulitzer Prize winner, uncovered the Catholic priest thing. Really nice man. I've talked to him, emailed him, very helpful to me. There's a great Netflix thing called This Is a Robbery. Right, just go on Netflix and type in Gardner. This will pop up. So I have more of these presentations. In case you want to go twice, which I can't imagine you do, but you know, you never know. Huh? And then I'm going to Vegas. I'm in residence with Cher for a while. Me too. So I have other books. So my first one is Conned. So my character, Harry Bartlett, plunges into the world of con artists on Nantucket and recovers wine scams. That's pretty cool. Like I said, I write where I've been. Then I have these two women. So I created a new word. And my new word is doppelschwindlers instead of doppelgangers. So they're lookalike women who run Ponzi schemes. So I sort of like that. The book I'm editing now is my Harry Bartlett's grandparents get scammed by Charles Ponzi in Boston, 1920. So it's another sort of fictional book, historical fiction. So that one's coming out. Next one after that is going to be sports frauds, baseball, basketball, football, and hockey. One after that is going to be called Fleeced. So a little town in Western Mass gets totally robbed of all their money, including a school that has a $500 million endowment. And the chief financial officers steal all their money. So that one will come out the year after that. And this one I just came up with 2 weeks ago, so this one's really cool. The Last Unindicted Mayor. So a friend of mine's father was a mayor in a town I can't mention. And after him, 4 mayors were all indicted. So he calls his father Last Unindicted Mayor. But I'm going to switch it. I'm going to have his dad be the mayor after those guys and get them all thrown in jail. But he said the Last Unindicted Mayor is just like, that is like the best title I've ever heard. So I sat up that all night. I read, I did this cover, I wrote a story. So in a couple of years, that'll come out. But I just love that story. So how it's going to end is, and a mayor in Marlborough, Mass. did this. He was indicted for selling a job, and he punched a hole in the ice of Lake Williams and dove into the water, into the ice, and committed suicide under the ice. That's a true story. So that's how this guy is going to die. But the thing is he unindicted because he didn't do anything? Or is he unindicted because he did and they didn't catch him? You don't know. Anywho. So I'm on Amazon. I'm in hardcover, paperback. See, paperback writer. I told you, I try and be amusing. I'm in ebook, but I'm also in audiobooks. So you can listen to this on your phone, in a radio, whatever. If you're on a long plane ride, you can listen and fall asleep. I'm on Facebook, PowerPoint, and I'm done. Thank you.